That's really a good point. I think that I do kind of look at it as an out, and here's why. Because this particular, I think, heresy that's in view here, the sort of heresy of the Judaizing type, where they're trying to get people to get under the Old Testament law in order to be in God's favor, and in some cases to be in salvation, then that I don't know what it is about it, but it really it has this sort of thing where people get very, very zealous about it, and that just completely consumes them. And it says here in the last verse that it's actually vain. It's a function of vanity when people fall into this. And I have also noticed, I've done this, I've used Titus 3:10 on a few occasions, and I didn't really think I was using it until I got done with like two attempts at trying to help them, and then I realized that this verse was there, and it was talking about this very, same type of sin and heresy, I guess it calls it here, and it's a really powerful thing. It's really draining. I've never been more drained trying to help somebody who is in some error than when trying to help the people that are in this particular thing. I don't know if it's a spiritual thing, if there's something attached to the whole heresy or whatever. It certainly is ancient, but it was great and a relief to know the Bible said, hey, after the first and second one, let them go, because and it describes why in some manner in the next verse. So we can go ahead and hit that if you want.
All right. Titus chapter 3, verse 11. Knowing that such a person is warped and sinful, he is self-condemned. Now, the New American Commentary put it well, so I will let that speak for me here in total. Paul concluded, you may be sure that such a man is warped and sinful. He is self-condemned. Because the factious man refused to change, Titus could be sure, literally knowing from the word eidos, of three things concerning this person. First, he was warped. This term renders the verb extrepho, used here in the perfect tense, passive mood. Literally, it means he has been and remains off the track. Second, he was sinful. Literally, he continues to sin, and that's harmatanai. And finally, because he willfully continues in the sin, he is self-condemned. Paul's use of the rare term self-condemned, translated from the Greek as autokatakritos, suggests that having refused correction, the factious man actually participates in his own condemnation, since he is without excuse. The significance of refuting false teaching in this letter is indicated by Paul's direct attack on factious men at the beginning of the letter, which we saw there in verse 10 of chapter 1, and now again at its conclusion here in verse 3 or verse 9 of chapter 3. His outstanding theological statements provide the sound doctrine that motivates believers to good works and makes the gospel attractive to a lost world. In contrast, the false teachers with their erroneous teaching motivate their followers to works that, in essence, quote-unquote, deny a true knowledge of God and destroy the doctrinal unity of the church. When the church cannot agree on the essentials of Christianity and is characterized by conflict and divisions, it is displeasing to God and ineffective to a lost world. Chris?
Man, that's a really good commentary. I'm just getting schooled on this one. I only have like a one-liner, and you pretty much already hit it. So it's basically that it says here, knowing that that is such subverted and sinneth, being condemned of himself. Sort of, it's his own. He's only got himself to blame for this, and it's something that he's doing wrong. It's nothing that you're not doing right if you're in the situation trying to help somebody with an extreme legalistic bent. And it says, as I mentioned before, that it's rooted in vanity. And that's all I got. So moving on.
All right. Titus chapter 3, verse 12. When I send Artemis or Tychicus to you, do your best to come to me at Nicopolis, for I have decided to spend the winter there. Now, in accordance with his usual custom, Paul ended this letter with some personal direction, some comments, and then finally a greeting. He first indicated future plans concerning both Titus and himself, stating, "As soon as I send Artemas or Tychicus to you, do your best to come to me at Nicopolis because I have decided to winter there." Although Paul was still undecided about where to send Artemas or Tychicus about whether to send Artemas or Tychicus to Titus, he was planning for Titus to join him in Nicopolis for the winter months. This is the only reference, interestingly, to Artemis in the New Testament. It is likely that Tychicus referred to Paul's traveling companion, dear brother and faithful servant in the Lord, which is also stated in Ephesians and Colossians, and his personal representative to churches. This is also referenced in 2 Timothy. Either Artemis or Tychicus would be sent to Titus, presumably for the purpose of taking his place in Crete. Upon his replacement's arrival, Titus was directed to do your best, that is, make every effort, as it's rendered in the New American Standard Version, to come to me at Nicopolis. Although Nicopolis was not an uncommon city name in the ancient world, Paul probably referred to the Nicopolis in Epirus, located in the Ambraciot Gulf of the Adriatic Sea. The geographical location of the Nicopolis fits well as a place to winter and should be a natural starting point for Titus's subsequent trip to Dalmatia. Paul himself had not yet reached Nicopolis, as indicated by his use of there. Now, his assertion, I have decided to winter there, reveals that he was a free man and not imprisoned, which gives us also interesting quotes and interesting ideas on the time and the dating of this letter. Chris?
Getting schooled on this one, too. All I got left is a quote from Wesley here, which says, "When then I shall send Artemas or Tychicus to succeed thee in thy office, Titus was properly an evangelist, who, according to the nature of that office, had no fixed residence, but presided over other elders. Whenever he traveled from place to place, assisting each of the apostles according to the measure of his abilities. Come to me in Nicopolis. It was a town of the same name, which lay upon the sea, the coast of Epirus. For I have determined to winter there. Hence it appears he was not there yet. He would have said to winter here. Consequently, this letter was not written from thence." And that is all I got for that one.
All right. Well, let's get on here to Titus chapter 3, verse 13. "Do your best to speed Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on their way. See that they lack nothing." Now, Titus was to do everything he could to help them on their journey. When the New Testament speaks elsewhere about doing this, and that's, you can check that out in like Acts 15, Romans 15, 1 Corinthians 16, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, and just on and on. The reference is to those who are engaging in some form of Christian ministry. It was very likely the same with Zenas and Apollos. Perhaps they were on a missionary journey, traveling from place to place, teaching and preaching the gospel. Or perhaps they had a very specific mission of which time and history have obscured. Titus was to see, as they moved on from Crete, they had everything that they needed. What that meant in practical terms, we can easily guess. They would need food for the journey. Perhaps they would need money as well, and maybe some new sandals and a staff, or a fresh change of clothes. Titus was to ensure that they received, and this is something that we can apply in our own lives, reaching out to others. This gets back to what I was saying earlier, loving other people radically. Go out there, see people doing ministry, give them things that they need, provide for them food. It says, if you give somebody a cup of cold water in my name, it's as if you've given it unto me. So think about that, Chris.
Yeah, this verse brings Zenas the lawyer and Apollos on the journey diligently, that nothing be wanting unto them. So, one thing you got to love about the Bible is these names and these places, real people, space-time history. This is not how you would write it if this was some made up thing. And there's so many different ways to prove that, but I just love the rich detail there. This is interesting from Barclay. Apollos was the well-known teacher in Acts 18 verse 24. Of Zenos we know nothing at all. He is here called nomikos, Greek 3544. That could mean one of two things. Nomikos is the regular word for scribe, and Zenos may have been a converted Jewish rabbi. It is also the normal Greek word for lawyer. And if that is its meaning, Zenos has the distinction of being the only lawyer mentioned in the New Testament. Morgan says, if the epistle closes with reference to Tychicus, Apollos, Artemis, and Zenos, the very mention of these names indicate the growth of the Christian movement. They are lacking in nothing, Morgan says. The final word concerning this occupation shows clearly that the duty of the members of the Christian church is to contribute to the support of those devoted to the work of the ministry. And that's all I have for that one.